Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for this recorded OLA 2021 conference session. The session title is A League of Your Own, How to Build and Maintain an Effective Team. And today I have Kelly Sitzman, who is the Director of Communication and Employee Development for the Pioneer Library System, and Taryn Kingery, who is the librarian at Norman Library East for the Pioneer Library System. So without further ado, I'm going to let them take it away.
Thanks, Allison. We are so excited to be here to talk to you about team building today, and we are really passionate about this topic. Taryn and I both are involved in team building at different levels. We have totally different roles, but we are both actively engaged in that on a regular basis. So we're going to share some tips and tricks with you today, and we're excited to kind of dig into this big topic.
Okay, well, thank you so much, guys, again, for choosing to watch our presentation. And what we're hoping is that this session will empower you to take your team from the minor leagues to the major leagues. So we're all part of the team in some way, somehow. If in a public library, your team is going to be the different people you work with in your branch. It might be that you work with different people across your system to plan programs for different age groups. It might be you're on committees for different initiatives. If you're in a municipality library, your team is directly the city, which is a great networking opportunity. In different library types, like school libraries, then you might have your principal or your teachers. Those are going to be your team. In an academic library, it'll be the academics, the professors, the students, the different department heads. And then, of course, you're in teams that might be tied to your profession, but maybe aren't a part of your daily job. Things like OLA, which I'm sure a lot of you that might be watching this are on committees for that. Board membership that's tied to your community in some way. Volunteer work that's also maybe tied to your community. And then we are all in teams completely outside of our jobs. For instance, I serve in the PTA. That's a team for me. Some of you might be on athletic teams, which kudos to you. That's great. Or maybe church leagues, those kinds of things. So we're not going to spend as much time on that particular area of a team, but I think a lot of the components we talk about are going to pertain pretty easily. So what we want you to do is take a moment to pause this and write down the teams in which you are a part. Save room because at the end you might want to edit this or add on to it. But go ahead, pause the presentation, jot down the teams that you are a part of, and then you can unpause and we will get going. Okay, so now that you've had a second to do that, we are going to kind of get into the meat of our program. So why is identifying your team important? Well, first of all, teams have the opportunity, but also the challenge of creating a positive culture. So if this culture ends up being in place, it will positively impact your customer base, and that's a wonderful thing. Positivity leads to action. Action leads to results. And so we really wanted you guys to think about who your team is before we started this program. And so as we go through this, we're going to be using a baseball analogy that you see on your screen right now. We're going to demonstrate how 7 positions on the baseball field pertain to a particular component of team building. Now, if you are a baseball guru, you might be saying there are 9 positions on the baseball field, but outfield is, for this analogy, going to be combined into 1. All right. So, bear with us on that. And we hope that this analogy will help you make your team into the major leagues.
All right, so the first position we're going to look at is the pitcher. And the pitcher is the person on the team that starts each play. They're really viewed as that leader on the team. All eyes are on them, kind of looking to that position for guidance. So every team, every successful team has clear and really strong leadership. All plays start with that leader. So what that means in real life is you are responsible for starting that play. You're responsible on your team for being a leader, setting the tone that you want to see your team operate under. You're responsible for motivating others, delegating, and just overall, as the pitcher, you are responsible for your team's success. So let's dig into that a little bit more. Again, like Taryn said, there are lots of different analogies or different settings that you can picture yourself as a leader of a team. So I want you to think about what that looks like in your world. Let's say that you aren't a hiring manager. That's okay. Write down kind of your position in your various teams that you work with. And picture that the spotlight is on you. We're going to talk about how we start a team and get this team going, because really you need to assess your team and build it before you can start developing the people on it. So let's say you aren't a hiring manager. You may still be a part of building a team. So that could be, like Taryn mentioned earlier, you're building a committee. Let's say you're tasked with a project. Who are you going to call and reach out to help you with that project? Who do you reach out to for success? Let's say you find yourself in a new role. Let's say maybe you're the teen volunteer coordinator for your branch, or you have been volunteered for an OLA committee, which we know happens. So think about all the different ways that this could pertain to you. And if you are a hiring manager, great. That's a little more tangible and easy to picture. But before you can start building up your team, you have to assess your team. A lot of times, if you have a vacancy on your team, you're filling a position, someone has left, we get into that habit of we really need to fill this seat. We're short-staffed. We need to get somebody in there as quickly as possible. But really, anytime you have a vacancy, that's a really great time to reflect. What is it that you need to be successful? What gaps did this person leave when they did leave the team? What is it that what skills did that person have that they didn't have that you wish somebody that you could bring on would have? So really reflect during that time. And I urge you not to just fill a position for the sake of filling the position. So in order to be successful, you need to know what your existing team looks like and/or what you want out of your team. So you want to ask yourself, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is the scope of your project or your goal if you're working with a committee? Who do you need to help you with this? And when I say, who do you need to help you with this? I don't mean Taryn is awesome. I want Taryn on my team. She's a rock star, which is also true. But what is it about Taryn that draws me to wanting her on my team? What skills does she possess? And maybe that timing isn't right. Maybe Taryn isn't applying for that position, or maybe Taryn has too many commitments and she can't be on my team. So what is it about Taryn that is so amazing that you want that kind of person on your team? So really reflect on that and think that through. You may also be in a position where you have a candidate that you really like, or somebody you want to fill in. Like I said, Taryn is, I can pick on her because we've worked together for a long time. So let's say you really love Taryn. She's personable, she's great, but really just remember that you're not hiring and you're not building a team based on the people you like, or based on the people that you think your team will like. It's more about how that person is going to fit in with your team and get you to where you need to go collectively. And sometimes that means you need to look for somebody who's going to challenge your team. You know, maybe it's somebody that they won't necessarily fit in as well because they're going to challenge them to think differently and move you forward. And that's just as important as that harmony aspect as well. And you'll get there. So get to know the team that you already have. You can do personality style tests, which we'll get to, and just get to know their strengths. How does your team react to stress and change? What are some areas of growth? And really think about the diversity that you can bring to the table. Diversity is really crucial in all of the different aspects of what that word means. You know, in terms of personality, I always like to use this analogy of you don't want to have everybody on a team be like you, because then you're going to drive the bus off the cliff, and you need that person who's going to say, hey guys, you need to turn left. You know, you need all different types of thinking and all different types of people on your team to make a really great team work. So you're most likely going to be finding yourself in that position where you're filling gaps on your team. It's rare that you have that opportunity to build a team from scratch, but that does happen. So I did want to talk about, so mostly you're filling gaps and filling vacancies, but let's say that you are building a team from scratch. The same kind of analogies apply. I keep saying the word analogy. I mean, the same kind of thought process applies here. And I'll just give a real life example that I went through when we opened Norman Public Library East a few years ago. And we had the opportunity to build that team from scratch. It was a brand new branch. We weren't transferring folks over. It was really a new opportunity to build a team. And we sat down before the posting even closed, before we saw applications. And we sat down and we talked not about people we'd like to fill seats, but what were the skills that these people we wanted them to possess. And we looked at, this was a branch that is in a new part of town that hasn't had a library before. So we really need people who are going to be able to get out in the community and want to be around other people, talking to them. We wanted people that were flexible. It was a very flexible service model. So not set up with departments. It's everybody kind of jumps in and does everything. We needed people who were tech savvy. There's a lot of state-of-the-art technology in that building. So we needed people who were not afraid to tinker with machines and get familiar with it. And then just people who could innovate and really have comfortability in operating without a roadmap, of whenever we created processes, they were from scratch. So we had all of this checklist, not an actual checklist, but we had this framework in mind before we even started hiring. And then when we sat down and talked to people, and we talked to some amazing people, and obviously there are only so many seats you can fill. So not everybody had that opportunity to join that team, but that really helped us in our decision making and helped us guide what's best for that branch and that community and the organization, better than, oh, we really liked them, they were nice, because we met a lot of people that had those skills. So that's just a real world example that you may find yourself in. You may be building a team from scratch. So just, think about those tools and how can you assess what it is you need and where you're going, and then fill people that will help you get there. And then lastly, in this section, just once you've given this some thought, you may also find yourself needing to trade players. You may have somebody on your team that isn't a great fit anymore. And that is your responsibility also as a leader, typically in that hiring manager position, but you may have to help them find another position. And you got to start that play by having those conversations. And then once you've done all of that, then you can start building your team, which we will get to. But before we move on to our next position, we're going to have you, after each position, fill out a few questions to self-reflect. And we really think that writing these things down in the moment will help you remember this presentation and what you learned. So we're going to ask you a few questions, and if you'll just hit pause and answer these, take whatever time you need. We're going to ask you, in what areas of leadership are you hitting a home run already? So where are you really doing a great job of being a pitcher and starting the play? What areas have you struck out, and then were you able to improve your swing? So maybe you made a mistake, but you recovered. And then lastly, in what areas could you be practicing harder? So what are some areas of improvement? So pause, take a moment to complete, and then hit play as soon as you're ready.
Okay, so now that you guys have had a chance to answer those questions, we're going to move on to the next position on the field. And we're going to move to catcher. Catcher is known as the field general. It is the only front-facing player on the field, so they have really good view of everything that's going on. And so we decided to tie this into communication. And so communication is a position or a component of teamwork that helps you build trust, connection, commitment, and ultimately, like I said earlier, a positive culture. So first, we're going to talk about what do we need to communicate? What is important to communicate in order to create and maintain a positive culture? First, we need to make sure we're communicating the mission and values of our organization. This should be the foundation of everything that you do every day at your job. It helps you guys stay on the same page with your team, which is really great. It also helps you set goals for both personal goals and branch or staff or team goals. And these are something that hopefully you can accomplish. And then you can again tie back into the fact that you are doing a great job adhering to the mission and values of your organization. So it's really important that you make sure to find ways to remind yourself of this often. And so one way that we do that in Pioneer is we have something called little values cards. And they're basically these like little tiny notes. And on one side, it states a value of our organization. organization, like empowerment, welcoming. And so on the back side, it has little lines, and it basically just allows you to write a note to a team member when you see that they're doing something that is important, when you see something that shows that they're really tying in their daily work to the mission and values of the organization. And then we leave it in a little mailbox, and it's just a great way to do kudos. And it also helps us kind of keep that in the back of our mind of what we're doing and why. And I was reading this great book, The Power of a Positive Team, that I'll probably say a couple more times or give examples from. And they said that often we get burned out because we forget why we are doing what we do. And so if we kind of always have that in the back of our mind, our mission and our values, I think that will truly help with that burnout stage. And the next thing that we need to communicate is the how and why behind initiatives. And when Kelly and I were planning this, she wrote in our notes, find your why as a team. And I just thought that was really powerful. I think it's really important as a team that when there's initiatives that come out in some way that pertain to you and your branch or organization, you think about as a team why that's important and how you're going to carry that out. And so, for example, in Pioneer, we have health literacy that isn't truly important to us, and we will have a reading program that goes along with that, and like actual programs in the library and displays that we do. And so, in staff meetings, we'll plan this together. We'll send out weekly inspirational emails that remind us about the why we're doing this, why this is important. You have to truly make it seem relevant to everyday work experiences. And so make sure you're sharing stories as a team through email. Make sure you're sharing on social media if you have that option. And then, of course, come up with displays and programs that pertain to that. The next thing that you need to make sure you're communicating is everyday issues. And this might seem like the simplest thing that I just said, but let me tell you, it is powerful. It makes a humongous difference in team building and teamwork. I am so grateful for my library staff. My team that I work with are amazing at communicating everyday issues. In a public library, it's so important because we have we work shifts, so we have hourly staff, full-time staff, and in order to be on the same page about everything, we have got to keep each other informed about the everyday. It might take a little bit of extra work. You might just be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a couple minutes late to starting my lunch, but it's truly important to write that email, let that next person know what's happening for the rest of the day. You have a city worker who's coming in to do some building maintenance. You have a class that's coming in from a school who's going to need a tour. All of this is super important to communicate and makes a huge difference in that positive team culture, and then also providing succinct customer service. It truly does. And then the fourth thing is to communicate about events, materials, and resources. Of course, your team is the best promoter of the programs that you have going on. So make sure you keep in the know about those programs so that you guys can promote for each other. And then we're going to get new materials. We're going to get new resources. You want to keep informed about those. You want to take those trainings that are available. And then anytime that there are changes in the physical layout of your building or in the resources that you're providing in your building, that is very important. We just did a huge shifting project. We took sci-fi and westerns completely out of being interfiled. And if I hadn't kept everybody in the know about this project, they could have just, taken them to the regular fiction collection, looked for Star Wars, it wouldn't have been there. But of course, I'm keeping everybody in the know that this is what's going on, and this is why we're doing this. It's going to hopefully have a positive impact on our customers. So that now that we know what we need to communicate, how do we best communicate? Well, I think it's pretty simple to think about. It really depends on the audience and the situation. So you really truly need to kind of think about to whom it's important you're communicating and what that situation is. Is it formal? Is it informal? This gives you context and clarity to how you're going to communicate. So I want you just to think about a couple things when we're thinking about the best way to communicate. Think about the ways that you're currently communicating with people, and then simply think about if there is a more effective or efficient way. So here's a few examples for you. In a school library, teachers are very busy. So maybe you have been sending emails and you're noticing that these are not getting opened, or, you'll go and talk to a teacher and they're like, what? I don't remember ever getting this. And you're like, okay, this is not effective anymore. Teachers are overwhelmed. There's too much going on. So that might be the time that you're like, I've got to do something that's going to be more eye catching. I'm going to do something that's going to just kind of get them right where they are when I have them. So maybe all of a sudden you are like, hey, I'm going to do a 2-minute update during staff meeting every week. I'm just going to get up and say, hey, we got some new programs. Hey, I'm partnering with the English classes, and this is what we're going to do this unit. Think about if that could be maybe a more effective and efficient way. Librarians are really creative, and I know that you guys are probably have some awesome ways that you're already doing this. But again, it's really important to think about the ways that you're communicating, if it's outdated, if there's better ways. In public library, for our example, it actually is pertaining directly to right now. We've started summer learning, and we've decided this year we're not really going to do a lot of paper handouts. We don't have a lot of bookmarks and those kind of things. We have basically learned through surveys and feedback that word of mouth is the most effective way to get the word out about this. And so we're really kind of leaning towards using our words and approaching our customers and telling them about summer learning, and also being a little more environmentally friendly and not handing out as many flyers. And so that's one way that we are adapting, and we are trying to discover the most effective way to communicate. So we're going to ask you guys to go ahead and pause and answer those 3 questions and reflect for a moment. And then when you are ready, we will move into the next section.
All right. So our next position is first base, moving right along. So first base, as you know, is a very important position. It's actually the 3rd most involved in the team. They receive a lot of throws, and they're usually the best hitter on the team. So how we're relating that to teamwork is really the first baseman is a key player, and you've assessed your team, you're building your team, you're working on communication with your team, and now it's time to develop your team. So you really want key players on your team. And even your most valuable players, your MVPs, you need to continue to develop. That's just as important as developing that player that's maybe not as engaged or not as skilled. You need to be developing your team at all levels. So we're going to talk about tips and tricks here on how to develop your team as a whole, as well as developing those individuals. So first and foremost, teams are people. We do think of teams as a unit, and that's a good, that's a good way to think of your team is we're all together, but all of those teams are made up of individual people with feelings and ideas and different backgrounds and all of that. So it can get complicated. So that's why it's important to get to know your teams on a personal level, whether you're the leader of the team or whether it's getting to know your peers. It's critical. It's not even important. It's critical. You have to get to know one another. And I would argue that it's even more important if you have a team that maybe you aren't jiving with to get to know one another. I think it's easy to get to know each other when everybody is happy and sunshine and rainbows. It's not as easy when you have a team that maybe it's not as functional as you would like it to be, but that's still just as important to get to know people on that personal level. So I really want to encourage today facilitation of team building among your teammates. And before you roll your eyes, because I know that team building does not get the best rep in the world, I really want to share some, I want you to be open-minded, and I want to share a few tips and tricks of ways that this can really be an effective tool. But really team building helps you pair your strengths and your weaknesses. It helps you get to know your individual interests and match tasks with that, so you can find your staff being more productive. And as a staff member, you could say, hey, I'm really interested in this and I would love to take this project on because I think it aligns with my strengths. So I think there are a lot of benefits, whether you're a leader or a member of a team. So how do you do this? How do you team build? How do you get to know each other? One of the lowest, it's a high impact, but very low investment, is creating a staff favorites list. So put out a list of, what's your favorite beverage? What's your favorite sports team? What's your favorite holiday? You can fill it with whatever you want, and then have your team fill that out. And that is a really fun way to get to know each other. Even, I will say, the sports team is a good conversation starter, I feel like, especially in libraries. Sometimes people are very passionate about what their team is, and other times they're like, sports who? So even that's a conversation starter. It's totally optional, but it's a fun, and like I said, very low, doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of effort, but it has a high reward. Again, unique icebreakers at staff meetings. And again, before you roll your eyes at icebreakers, they really can be effective. I know that some people are not crazy about them, but think about different ways and tailor them to your team. You know your team. So find what works for you guys. One that I participated in recently that I wanted to share is pretty simple. You ask 3 questions. It is, where did you grow up? So your socioeconomic status, your geographic location, whatever you want to share about where you grew up. Do you have any siblings? And if so, what is your birth order? And what is the biggest challenge you've had to overcome, and what did you learn? And I recently was a part of this icebreaker in a group with our leadership team. And I had a couple people in that meeting that I've known for almost a decade, for years, know them very well. And then I had one person who I had just met in that meeting. That was our first time to talk with one another. And by the time all 4 of us had shared, all of us had cried at least once, which was not anticipated. But we were all really vulnerable with one another. And I just really loved that. It was so powerful and unexpected. And we really learned a lot about each other, even the folks that I'd known for years. And then this new individual that is on our team, it really gave us a chance to kind of see each other as people and then move forward from there. So you don't have to cry. It doesn't have to be that emotional or that intense, but again, just kind of breaks down that barrier of, you're not your position, you're an actual human who's filling that spot. Personality style assessments, I mentioned that earlier. I'm such a fan of these. I love them so much, not just because it helps you understand each other, but it is such a good self-reflection tool as well. I think people learn a lot about themselves by taking those. There are a ton of different ones out there. There's Myers-Briggs, there's DISC, there's the Enneagram. There are all kinds of different personality assessments, and we've shared some of those resources at the end of this presentation. But I really encourage you to do those as a team. Have everybody complete and then bring it together and really compare and contrast your different personality types. And one of my favorite reasons for doing this is, yes, it's fun. You can also share what Harry Potter character you are and things like that, but it also helps identify dissonance. So let's say that Taryn is really, she is a protector of stewardship. She is really into, making sure that we're spending our money accurately and wisely. And then I am freedom of access, right? And so I'm here waving fines left and right. And Taryn, it's driving her crazy because why am I wasting money like that? But whether it's right or wrong, just that dissonance that is creating among your team, it can help uncover barriers like that and have you sit down and say, okay, here's, I think, what's going on. Again, either as a leader, you can identify that, or I can go to Taryn and be like, I think I've got it. I think I know why we're butting heads so much. So again, it's a tool. It's fun, but it's also useful in building people. Team-focused literature is another tool. As you all know, I'm sure, by pointing out references in books, it can take that personal element out of things. So you can share, one of my favorites is 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and you can say, man, Mikey was really being a pretty awful teammate, don't you think? What was it that Mikey was doing that was not so great? So that helps kind of bring everybody together, and it's a shared kind of experience. And then lastly, I just want to encourage again that team first thinking of really your team should come first. You're thinking outside of yourself. You're thinking beyond the decisions that you make as an individual are impacting others. It's impacting your team, and not just your direct team, but your larger team, your larger, whether that's your department in your location, or it's your school as a whole, or it's your organization or your whole community. Just really think in that team first mentality when you're thinking about making decisions or, bringing ideas to the table. Who else is this going to impact? You can initiate this team building from any level, lead from where you are. So again, if you're not a team lead or a manager, you can still request these kinds of activities and even offer to lead them, get brushed up and learn how to lead them. And also you can do this outside of your department. So, and you can do this with your teachers, like Taryn said, depending on who your team is, you can lead this in a number of different ways. And then finally, once you've gotten to know your team and peers as people, then you can start to develop them. You can match their interests. You can challenge them with new projects. Like I said, I think your high performers need challenges too. Key players are wonderful, but they also need check-ins and feedback as much as your peers or staff that need some help. But once you've identified their natural strengths and their preferences, then you can really begin to develop them personally and professionally in a meaningful way. So again, pause, think about where you are doing a great job with team building, maybe where you've had some recovery and where you can grow. And then we will get moving to the next position.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. I love everything that Kelly is saying. It's really fun because she hired she hired me and she hired a great team. And I've felt so thankful to get to work at Norman East because Kelly's really awesome at what she's talking about. And so it's really fun to listen to her do this and all these team building things. She's done a lot of them and they really are effective. And we continue those, even though she's not at Norman East. We continue those. So I think this is pretty neat to get to hear her talk about it and share her expertise on that. So next we're going to move to second base, and this is the transition point from catching to throwing, and it's also known as the pivot point on the field. And so we were able to tie this into the teamwork component of, well, sorry, getting there. I'll just start talking until it turns, but into collaboration. And so the idea with that and collaboration tying well into this is because we decide to collaborate, or the importance of collaboration is taking something from one point and one perspective and then pivoting into different areas and different perspectives. So it's taking that one initial idea and coming up with something else awesome and more thorough. All right, there it goes. And so collaboration, it builds connection, it facilitates innovation, promotes staff involvement and therefore enthusiasm. Staff can feel valued and trusted because their ideas are being heard. And often large projects can be completed more efficiently and effectively, which is a positive for sure. And so, what factors contribute to positive collaboration? Well, I found this really great article that was actually like a keynote speaker presentation at a library conference that it'll be noted at the very end of this presentation in case you want to look more in depth. But there were some really great factors that she noted that were positive to collaborative efforts. And so I wanted to share those and then kind of tie them into our presentation. So, needs and benefits, attitude, communication, vision, mission, and goals, resources, and community development. So to go a little bit more in depth on that, needs and benefits. It's important to kind of recognize when it would be really beneficial to collaborate together and what would be the benefits that could come from it. So when there's a need, and then match it with the benefit of what that could be. Attitude. Attitude is so important to collaborative efforts. You have got to realize that you're going to be talking to people that are going to be coming from different perspectives, different personalities, as Kelly's kind of mentioned. And so you got to have an open mind and just a positive mindset if you want to have a quality collaborative effort. Communication. I know I've already spent a lot of time talking about that. That was a whole component of teamwork in itself. But in collaboration, it's important to have communication throughout the whole process. You want everybody to be on the same page. You want people to know the ultimate goal. You want people to know their specific roles in this collaborative effort. And then the vision, mission, and goals. Again, like I said earlier, you got to know those. You got to believe in those. You got to keep those as the foundation of all of your effort as a team. And then resources that pertains to having the backing of leadership, having someone behind your back saying, yes, this is good. This is what we want you to do. You're going in the right direction. We're all for this. And then also resources can pertain to the budget and finances. Do you have the finances to be able to do this in the way that you hope to? If not, do we need to kind of look at how we could change this up a little? Do we need to try to apply for some grants? Like all of those are really important. And then community development, knowing that what you're doing and collaborating on is building and benefiting your community is awesome. And then also thinking about how it could make a great partnership in the future for future initiatives is a good sign that you're going to have a positive collaborative effort. So now that we know the factors needed to have a positive collaborative effort, how do you collaborate with your team and then with outside partners? So one thing I want to say is with the team, it's so important that it is routine and expected. So I do want to, kind of call out or talk to specifically managers, principals, project managers. You guys really have an important role of setting the tone that this is something that is expected and routine. You can do this by having this happen in staff meetings, giving examples to your team of when it's been beneficial, doing shout outs like, hey, Kelly and Allison did an awesome job collaborating on this particular project. We want to see more of that. And so setting that tone is so important. Model that behavior with your team. Set one-on-one meetings with your teammates so that you guys can have that one-on-one collaboration. Send articles relating to teamwork. Like Kelly said, sending out literature in pertaining to a specific subject is so important and so helpful. Schedule bi-monthly or bi-weekly meetings where you talk through plans for the next few months. All of these times, the scheduled times can be so important. I work in a medium to small branch. And so I was thinking about it, like we do a lot just to keep the library open on a daily basis, and it's not necessarily collaborative. It's just like, I need to do the money, I need to open the doors, I need to get delivery done, all that kind of stuff. And so I've always been really grateful that the managers I've had here, they've allowed us to really set these times that we can get together as like salary staff to do our collaborative, creative kind of plans, because it allows me to kind of turn on that brain or that side of my brain and be able to really focus on that and just have these excellent collaborative sessions. And so that's something that I just think is so important. Some of it goes back to me personally. My personality is like someone who likes to throw out ideas, and I really need people around me to help me flesh them out and come together. So I'm a huge, huge proponent of collaboration for sure. And so it's just something that can be really important and effective to your team in so many ways. And it's really just something I want you guys to consider if you're not already doing a lot of that. And then you also want to collaborate with outside partners. Now, this doesn't have to be formal. It can be very informal. It can be as simple as dropping off flyers for a new resource that you think an organization in your community would benefit from. So our goal as a team was health literacy, and we worked with gyms. So whenever we had some new flyers relating to some health resources, we went and dropped those off at the gym in case any of their staff or any of the customers might benefit from those. A teacher could go ahead and just drop off books in a teacher's classroom because they know that they're going to be working on a specific unit. They can be very proactive with that. Also, it's very important to, like I said, provide needs with outside partners, but you also want to make sure that you ask for their needs, because a true partnership and true collaboration is two-way. You need people to be able to provide their own needs to you as well as you providing needs to them. And that actually is something that will make it a longer lasting relationship. So think about your goals, but be willing to listen to other people's goals and assisting them in that. And so now we want you guys to do that reflection activity that we've been doing after each part. So go ahead and pause right here, and we will move on to the next goal in just a second, or the next component in just a second. All right, we're going to move right along now. The next role on the field we're going to look at is shortstop. And shortstop has the most ground to cover on the field. They cover balls between second and third base, and sometimes a little bit in the outfield and infield. And so they are known as the anchor of the infield. And so we tied this in to the component of delegation. And the idea behind this is that the reason that we ultimately delegate is because we have a lot of ground to cover and we're needing help. And so that is kind of simple, but that's how we were decided to go ahead and tie that in. We're going to talk a little bit about the benefits of delegation, and we all have a need for that at times. And so there are some great benefits, and there's some great ways that you can do this effectively. So some benefits of delegation is that it can often take a task off your plate. So maybe you have a project that you need to really sit down and focus on that's kind of higher level thinking, and you just need this particular task to be taken off your plate so that you can sit down and do that other one. Maybe you have something that's due pretty quickly, and so you need to go ahead and pass this one off so that you can focus on the one that's due a little bit quicker. It also improves efficiency and productivity and ultimately time management. It allows others to learn, grow, and take charge. I think this is one of the biggest benefits of delegation is that you are really able to hand off something to someone who honestly might have more talent or skills in this area. They might do a better job than you. And then the fact that they're getting to learn and grow from that is a huge, huge thing because we can't be stagnant in our job. We need the opportunity to take on new tasks, new roles, and to develop our skills and talents. And then it develops trust between staff because people are able to kind of feel like, oh my goodness, I have just been asked to do this. I feel valued, worthy, and capable. And that's, I mean, who doesn't love to feel that way? So how can we do this effectively? Well, first of all, you need to, well, I want to go back to this that I kind of said in my last the last slides that I had done, but manager, principal, project manager, definitely remember to set the tone that anyone is able to delegate on your team. I'll get a little more into that in just a second, but set the tone that this is something that is expected from anybody as long as we're doing it in the right ways and with the right attitude behind it. So first, decide when a task is appropriate for delegation. There's certainly things that you need to tackle on your own that are your responsibility, but there's certainly a lot that you can probably delegate out. So think about that. And then once you have something that's a good match for delegating, try to match those tasks up by skill and interest first as much as you can. I think that's going to make it be the most effective and successful end product if you can do that. But I do realize, especially me working in a public library, that that can't always happen. Sometimes it has to be done by the schedule, by the shift that someone's working. And so if that's the case and you're going to be delegating something out to say your closing staff for the evening, just make sure that there's clarity in the goal of the project and whatever is needed for to follow up, make sure you follow up with that person. And then, make sure you're breaking up big projects into smaller chunks. I think this is very helpful in terms of getting big projects done effectively and efficiently. But you do need to make sure that when you do this, there's clarity in the goal, of course, and make sure that you are giving you're checking in with people throughout that process. And then for those tasks that are always there, make sure that you vary those up from person to person. Sometimes people can start to feel a little burned out or a little bored. And again, we don't want to be stagnant. We want people to learn and grow as much as possible. So if there's a chance to vary those daily and weekly tasks, that is a great opportunity to do that. And then I want to go back to what I had kind of said right at the beginning of managers and principals setting the precedent that anyone can delegate. Kelly and I really wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about peer-to-peer delegation. This is something that can feel really awkward. I know I've been there. I think it can feel a little bit awkward, but I think I've gotten past that because I've read a lot about this and I've thought a lot about this. And it's really just actually awesome opportunity, like I've said already, to be able to give someone a new task to learn, grow, and display their talents. But I think also when you ask someone to delegate, the idea is that you really need support. And if we have that foundation of the mission and the values of our organization, then asking for support from your teammate is actually it's needed, it's important, and it's crucial to do that. So if you think about it and frame it as the idea that I really need your support in order to carry out this particular task, then I think it can be a less scary and awkward thing. Just think about it as you're helping each other out. You're framing it in a way that you need the help in order to do a more complete, thorough, and better finished product. So I think, of course, we go back to the idea that, I mean, tone is important. We could spend probably a whole presentation talking about how we say the things that we say. And so that's obviously important. But I think that managers and principals maybe just take that time to talk about how delegation is ultimately asking for support and passing off the torch to someone who you think can do just as good of a job, if not better than you. Now, I know some of you guys are in libraries that you are flying solo. I know that that happens a lot in schools. And kudos to you guys, because that is that is difficult. That is a huge challenge. And I respect that a lot. And I am very amazed and inspired by that. But it is hard. And so this can look a little bit different. Like you're like, who in the world am I delegating stuff to? Like myself, my next head, my 6 arms. Like I don't have all that. But what you're going to have to do is be a little more creative. Um, Definitely utilize volunteers. I am a huge fan of volunteering. I know Kelly is, she's involved in lots of volunteer work, and there are people out there that want to volunteer. They buy into what you're doing, they find what you're doing valuable and important. So make sure that you try to utilize volunteers. Now, we are in a COVID environment. I get that. It's been really hard. We haven't had a lot of volunteer opportunities in our public library. So maybe it's something that you can do virtually, remotely, send stuff out to people in that way. Also ask for interest in other departments. There might be teachers who are just like really wanting, if they knew you had that need, if they knew that you were feeling overwhelmed, they might want to help. Maybe they're super interested in whatever you're working on, and maybe it would just be something that would get their brain a little excited to be able to help you with. So don't be afraid to ask for that help. And then intentionally try to form partnerships with organizations in your community. Think about what your goal is of this particular task, and think about someone or an organization in the community who would maybe be a really good partner. And then make sure that you're able to provide some mutual support in that way. And that way you guys can both really be of value to one another. So yeah, definitely it might be a little more difficult, but I think there's ways for you to be able to get that extra help and to delegate out some of that work. So now we again want to do that reflection activity. So go ahead and pause and answer those 3 questions, and then we will move on to the next component of teamwork.
All right, thanks, Taryn. Third base, we're rounding through. Third base is a very versatile position. They have a very fast reaction time. The stakes are high. This is kind of that last form of defense before you score. So third base, we really wanted to talk about the skill of flexibility. So there, again, we could spend a whole presentation talking about flexibility. And this is a skill that we know a lot of libraries and librarians already have. It's kind of vital for us to be flexible and innovate forward and stay relevant. But I want to talk about a few different ways we can think about flexibility. Obviously, maybe what first comes to mind are tasks and schedules. So thinking about your schedule for the day, you have a set number of activities that you want to get done. And then of course, there are going to be wrenches that are thrown into that. So let's say you are working in your school library, you have a big shifting project, but now a teacher needs you to come in today because they need help with technology, or they need you to help teach a component of their class. And you have to drop what you're doing and go help them. It could be flexibility with your schedule where, you know, Taryn's 30 minutes late, so I'm having to stay 30 minutes late. Never happened once, I'm sure. But, you know, it happens. Life happens. So how can you be flexible and how can you adapt and do it with a positive attitude? You know, thinking about tasks, I think delegation is a huge solution to that. Those things that come up, think of what you can delegate and what you can ask for help with so that you can meet those deadlines and pivot to what's most important in the moment. You know, think about flexibility on, for those of you that know the terms on and off desk. You planned to spend a lot of off desk time working on a project. Suddenly somebody calls in sick and now you are spending your time on the public floor, which is great. How can you, you know, still make those things happen that you need to get done, but also still help customers, because ultimately that's what we're here for. You know, that's our main purpose. So, obviously, those are the first things that we might think of when it comes to flexibility, but I really want to talk about flexibility as an attitude and as a lifestyle. So again, all of those are great examples of flexibility, but how you do that is critical. Is it, yeah, I guess I'll be flexible because Taryn called in again and I'm going to have to go on the floor? Or is it, great, I get to spend a day with customers and get to share library resources with them? So really think of how you can build flexibility into your lifestyle, your values, and see those as opportunities and not challenges or hurdles. There are lots of different ways that we can think about flexibility in terms of environmental changes. Obviously, the elephant in the room is COVID. We had a pandemic this last year that threw off everyone's plans in the entire world. so I couldn't think of a better example to talk about flexibility, silver linings. But that threw off our world in so many different ways, and we had to be flexible. And again, what was your attitude with that? What was your mentality? And it's okay to say it was a challenge. It's okay to say that this is not your default, is being flexible, but it is a skill that you can adapt, and it's a skill and an exercise that you can, it's a muscle you can flex. So think about flexibility and adaptability as, how do you react to change, and how do you react when life throws things in your plan? Um, Obviously, an example within the pandemic is a great example, but even within that, we saw environmental changes. For example, at East, when I was there, we had teams. We broke into teams across all PLS. Every branch broke into teams so that we were working solely with a set number of people to avoid cross-contamination. And so, our branch of 10 or 11 people went down to, I was seeing the same 2 people every day. So all of the components that we've talked about so far changed. How do you communicate when you literally don't see anybody else outside of your team? And, and that's the norm for a lot of people. But for us, it was a shift of, we were a collaborative. We saw each other in passing, lots of opportunities to share in person. But when that opportunity is gone, how do you pivot? And you make it work. You find technologies that will help you accomplish that goal. You utilize new communication tools. So, even within COVID, there were lots of environmental changes that had nothing to do with, the virus itself. It was just, now this team looks different. And it was temporary, and we made it through, but, and we've certainly learned from that and taken some lessons, and we'll move that forward. And I think we all came out of this a little more flexible than we were last year. I also want to encourage you to think about ways that, again, flexibility is not built into everyone's personality type, and that's fine. How can you plan ahead for things that could change, and how do you cope with that? One of my silly examples is my gym bag example. So I am trying to get to the gym every day after work. It's a goal. I want to be healthy, whatever. But there are days when it's 4:55 and I'm ready to head out the door, and Taryn comes and says, "Hey, do you have a minute to talk about something that's really important?" So we end up talking, and next thing I know, oh no, it's 6 o'clock. Guess I can't go to the gym. So what I started to do was pack my gym bag ahead of time. So I didn't have time to go home and change and then go make it. So I would just bring what I needed with me for the day. And, then I have no excuses. We can still have that conversation. We can still be off track a little bit, but that was kind of that coping mechanism of, okay, I still have what I need to get this done, and let's get it done. So it's a silly example, but how can you pack a gym bag for your everyday life and just be prepared for those inevitable changes that are going to crop up throughout the day? And then, there are I love the conversations going on in our world about mental health and staying calm and managing stress. And so there are a number of great tools out there, but that's really important, whether that's setting a goal of 3 times today, I'm going to use my meditation app to breathe through the stress that I'm feeling, or find your place that brings you calm. So if you have a wellness room, go spend some time in there. If you don't have a wellness room, advocate for a wellness room. They're great. You can take a walk. Just find whatever mechanisms work for you to deal with that stress and take care of yourself. And you can, I'm of the mindset you can have it all. You're going to have stressful moments, but you can also manage that stress yourself. So that's it for flexibility. Again, we could spend a year on this topic, but take a moment, write down your reflections, and then we'll move on to our last position. All right, lastly, we are going to talk about the outfield. Outfielders have good field coverage, and they have the best vision on the field. They can see what's going on, and they can recognize all the great plays that are being had. So we are going to talk today about outfield as recognition. Recognition is a huge part of building and being a part of a successful team. Remember earlier when I stressed that team first thinking, and we see teams as people, but also they're a unit. Sometimes it's really easy to get lost in a team, and sometimes you can feel unappreciated or overlooked. So it's important to recognize people as individuals. And again, either as the leader, recognizing individuals on your team, or as a team member, recognizing individuals on your team. Take time to appreciate the whole team, but also see those individual people. Also, I will say, just as a leader, it is nice when your team recognizes the work that you're doing. Sometimes we are not the best at self-care or putting ourselves first, but take that time to also appreciate the work that you're doing and that you're doing for others. Recognition looks different for every person. So it's important to, again, knowing your team, like we talked about earlier, understand what type of recognition your team appreciates, your team members appreciate. So I have had a number of different personalities that I've worked with, and I've had people that the way that they want to be recognized is privately. So I will leave a post-it, or Taryn mentioned our values cards. I will leave a values card under their keyboard for them to find the next day. They do not want a parade. They do not want to have the spotlight on them. And then there are people that do. There are the people that want the plaque. They want that recognition to be public, and that's how they feel valued, and that's okay too. It's just important to know all of those different types and everything in between, so that you aren't, misstepping when you think you're recognizing someone and really you're humiliating them. They will appreciate it, and you will thank yourself later. So a really great tool that is included in our notes is the 5 love languages at work. It's a fun quiz you can take. I think there's a free resource available, and you can find out how people want to be appreciated. So either acts of service, like, hey, Taryn, I took care of the poll list today. Like, that could be huge for her. Or it's more of words of affirmation. So saying, Taryn, you did a really great job on that project. That's more valuable to her. So that's another great tool to get to know kind of how people want to be seen. The other thing I love to do for recognition, and going back to the mission of your organization that you're trying to accomplish, is explicitly drawing those connections that when someone has made an impact on a larger project. So even, it's something that is huge and you can't even see yourself in that project anywhere. I like to point out, hey, you were a part of this initial conversation that got this going. Or, like whether that's, we just rolled out a strategic plan. And so saying, hey, this is your feedback. I don't know if you recognize it. It's changed. It doesn't look the same, but that is where you helped contribute to this bigger picture. Or a new service that's been rolled out. Maybe you suggested it 6 years ago and it wasn't the right time then, but it is now. Drawing those connections for people helps them see how they contribute to something bigger than themselves. And even though it's not, you're not going to get the credit, your name's not on that plaque, you are still a part of that. And that is huge. That, I think that ties back to the seeing the why, and not getting burnt out, and recognizing that you are making a difference in your everyday. And then, of course, the last type of recognition is kind of silly, but and obvious, but celebrating birthdays, accomplishments, recognizing, graduations and next steps in people's lives, because that matters just as much as work things do. And we spend a lot of time with each other as coworkers, so that's always meaningful when somebody is checking in on how you're doing, or hey, good job on buying your first home, congratulations. And then, of course, recognizing those tough situations as well. Again, not everything is sunshine and rainbows. We recognize that. And so that's important to say too. I know that you're going through a tough time. How can I help? Do you need some time to just decompress in the back? Let me take care of that for you, that kind of thing. So celebrate the good times, support each other in the bad times, and just be there for each other overall. All right, so this is your last activity, so make it a good one. Write down where you are hitting a home run already, where you've struck out and recovered, and what areas you could be practicing harder, and then we will wrap up.
Okay, well, you guys, thank you so much for listening in this last hour. As we wrap up, we just wanted you to kind of take a look at those teams that you noted at the very beginning of the presentation. And then also take a look at this slide right here, which has the roles on the field as well as the components tied in. And think about the teams that you're on, and maybe what areas, what components are needing a little extra extra love and attention for each of those teams that you're on. So maybe my PTA is doing a really good job at collaboration, but we haven't really been recognizing each other well. Maybe my team is kind of forgetting to do team building. So we're just not really coming together very well on those kinds of things. So maybe just take a look, note that beside there, and then spend some time for the rest of this year trying to really hit it out of the ballpark with that. And then, sorry, let me get to the next one. If you have any questions, this is our email. So just jot those down, take a screenshot of that, whatever you need. Kelly and I definitely wanted to emphasize that we would love to talk to you and answer questions and just get feedback and hear your thoughts on this presentation. Feel free to email us. We would love that. Like Kelly noted, she really actually got that awesome opportunity to literally start a team from scratch. So if you are that person, that could be pretty overwhelming. And so I know that she would be someone to really seek out and get some great advice or just encouragement on. So that is our info. And then we want you guys just to hit it out of the ballpark with your team building. Remember that each team is unique, filled with individuals who have their own talents and personalities and skills and values. So keep that in mind, keep all these components in mind, maybe even keep this analogy in mind. And I know that you guys are going to make it to the major leagues with your team. Last slide is a list of teamwork resources. They're live links that you're able to click on, or if you want to just take like a screenshot or something, you are certainly probably could just Google the same kind of stuff. But these are some of the ones we've mentioned throughout our presentation. And so again, thank you for watching this, and I hope you got something out of it. And yeah, thanks for being part of OLA.
Awesome. Okay, well, I do have a few questions that I'm going to ask, and I love being able to moderate this session because it's questions that, apply to our workplace. So hopefully they'll apply to you all too. So you guys mentioned a little bit about COVID, and I think, it has truly impacted everyone. So how do you find the best way to reinvigorate and remotivate your team in kind of, in the new normal, kind of getting back to normal, whether they become complacent or they're scared? How do you just remotivate them?
That's a great question. I'm going to kick it off to Taryn in a second, because I think she did some really great team building activities throughout the pandemic when we were all working remotely. She had some really great, just like questions and things. I won't steal her thunder, so I'll kick that to you. But I would say start by sharing those experiences. I think we all had individual experiences with COVID, and we were all affected in one way or another directly by this. And also it was a shared experience. So this was one of the opportunities where we all went through this together. We all know exactly what this was like. And then also we don't know what this was like for one another. So just inviting folks to share kind of their experiences, and if they're comfortable doing that, of course, and certainly, again, maybe not something that people want to share, but just inviting that space to recognize that, yes, we had a hard year and this is crazy, and we made it through the other side, and how can we all get there to move forward. So I think that's maybe the first step that I would share, is getting to that place. And then I think the other kind of piece of that is, once you've recognized that and you've had that space to kind of be raw and to acknowledge that it has been tough, is to think about all the great things that have come out of this past year. I know that everybody saw new services, new engagement with different customers. And so really thinking forward of, we don't know when the next, what's going to come in the future, but what is it that we see, and what is it that we're excited about, and what do we want to carry forward, and how can we really dig in with that? And, just recognizing that we have a lot of opportunity to do new things and get excited. And it was a pause button on the hamster wheel, is what I've been saying a lot recently, is this was a natural pause to our workflow. And so remember when I said earlier that anytime there's a vacancy, we want to fill it. Don't just fall back into whatever you were doing before. Take this time, reflect on the past year, and then think about how you can move forward as a team. And I feel like that will give people a chance to think about what they're excited about to move forward with. But and I'll kick it to Taryn for anything else she has, but I do love what you did during the pandemic for the team that you were working with.
Kelly, making sure that I'm remembering. I remember one thing I did on Teams, where I would kind of do like a literature question of the week, like what's your favorite book you read as a kid? If you were on a deserted island, what 3 books would you read? I like to talk, okay? And I was missing that I was like, not able to see like my teammates and talk with them and like ask those silly questions, I guess, that I probably tend to always do. And so that was for me a comfort. I'd love to come back and be like, oh my gosh, I'm still learning about Samuel during this time, even though I'm not physically with him. Like, I know that he would take this particular book on a deserted island, and that just tells me more about him or whatever. And it made me feel like I was a little bit with them. But which other things are you talking about?
That was it. I just love
Okay,
that.
just making sure.
Yeah, yeah, I know it was a long time ago, but once a week she would post questions in our Teams chat, and it would just be a conversation starter, and it was silly, and it wasn't, it wasn't a heavy topic. It was just, hey, just a reminder that we're all in this together, and I still want to chat with you outside
Yeah.
of, the day to day. So
Yeah, I think we all sometimes need a little not heavy through all this. And so that I think that's one way is to like try to do something that's not heavy, like bring, I don't know, some whatever that could be, can be like uplifting a little bit. And I think also like celebrating, like Kelly was saying, the new skills and things that we've done and seeing like how they can translate as we continue to provide new services in new ways, and being like, wow, Samuel, I've seen those videos. Those are so magnificent. They're so great. And that recognition piece is great. And then celebrating whenever a step in the like old direction, like we are now circulating our board books and newspapers and kits again. And so I think being like, oh my gosh, this is so great. We get to kind of slowly get back to where we are. And that's, I guess, those little steps just start to feel good, even if things won't always be or technically be ever the same. It is fun to get to kind of have those little celebration moments where things feel a little bit like they are getting back to the same. Um, and then I think also working, like having fun working with what we are doing. So, yes, we can't provide in-person summer learning programs, but what are some really cool displays that can still get people amped? How can people be using their creativity with what we are actually able to offer right now is a good way to kind of get people maybe excited and motivated. Maybe those things can help a little bit with what you asked.
Okay, thank you. So how do you reignite a passion or drive in maybe a longtime employee that seems to have kind of lost the mission of the organization? Like, you mentioned earlier about moving to a different position, but like if that's not possible, how do you just reignite their drive to, serve the public?
that's a great question. What first comes to mind is still using some of those tools that I mentioned earlier in terms of getting to know them. And Taryn mentioned this too, but what is the why? Why are we working here? Really asking them, what is it that draws them to their role? What are they enjoying? What are the hurdles they're encountering? Also, I think in a one-on-one setting, obviously, but setting regular one-on-one times to meet with that person and get to, what is it that gets you up and going in the mornings? What brings you to work every day, especially after that such a long career in, in one position or one place? What is it that keeps you coming back? And talking through that and then finding other opportunities. Another more specific answer, I love an activity, and I believe we did this through OLA Gold, so that's my plug to apply for OLA Gold. But we went through a visions and values exercise, and it helps you identify what it is that your professional values are. Like I mentioned earlier, are you passionate about intellectual freedom or ease of access or stewardship, or what is it that professionally you value? And then from that, you think about your personal vision and what is it that brings you to work every day? What is the why? What will help you make decisions? What will help you get out of bed in the morning? And crafting that vision statement for yourself, and then putting it somewhere where you can see it every day. I have mine, you can't see it from where I am, but it's on my bookshelf right here. I framed it so that I didn't frame it. It was a gift. Somebody gifted it to me. It was very sweet. But my vision statement is on my shelf. I see it every day. And that helps me get going whenever I feel like, man, I had a really tough day. Or, if you struggle with where your organization is going, really think about that. And I think those are the tough conversations you have to have with those people is, what is it that will get you reignited? And sometimes you can't, sometimes it's not the right fit. And I think that that's when you can kind of determine, okay, which path are we taking together and how can we get there?
Yeah, I just think looking at asking them for their goals, what are your goals? Sit down and think about, do you have goals left? And what if you could do anything in this job that you haven't accomplished yet, like what would that look like? And let them dream a little bit. Maybe they haven't let themselves dream a little bit. And so that could be some a way. And Kelly did a way better job answering that, but that's what comes to my mind.
No, I love that. Let them dream.
Let them dream.
Well, I mean, I think I always think it's good to have goals. We recently started doing that in our system a couple of years ago. Like every year you have to make goals for that year. And it was a little hard for some people at first, but I mean, you should always have goals. Like otherwise, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. And the goal helps me also to continue and like have something that each day or each week I'm like looking forward to or know that I have to do. So maybe that person also feels like they're not really sure where to go. And so that could be another reason that they feel that way. So I think goals I agree. I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have goals.
It's good. It's good to have personal goals. I mean, yeah. Goals are just good. So my last question is, how do you build teams who may be separated by distance or, they're a much smaller team? How do you best motivate them, do team building with them when they can't always be in the same location?
That's a great question too. You're full of them today. I think that again is a silver lining of COVID. We have technology that either we had, but we didn't really maximize before. So definitely continuing to use those tools to connect. I think the other thing that comes to mind is, personally, I'm thinking about, I just took this new role in January and my team's changed. So I am a part of administrative team for our organization. And then I also manage two different departments. So those are two different teams, plus our team as a whole. So thinking about all those different teams and I don't see them every day. And then even our administrative team, most of us work within the same building, but we all have different hats we're wearing. So we're all, it's a different team kind of lens that you're looking at. How are we moving the organization forward when this is important to me, this is important to you? So anyway, I'm giving some context to say, I think that team first thinking of who is that person that you're going to share information with first, and thinking about that of, are you sharing it with the people just in your location? But if you really have a team that's separated by distance, like branch managers, how is your branch manager team connecting at that same regular level that you're connecting with your branch that you supervise as a branch manager? And I think just setting the time, being intentional about setting that time aside to find the time to meet, and then really looking for those opportunities of, and again, I'm speaking from personal experience where I would normally share this with my team downward, but really, should I be sharing that with my team of peers first? So I don't know if that is too specific and doesn't answer your question, but I think maybe finding the time and then finding what opportunities you have to, not just meet for the sake of meeting, but what is it that you can share with that team from afar? And then, just utilizing this technology that we have. There's so many great online tools, not just Zoom and Teams and, all of the meeting facility or meeting hosts, but also Google Docs and all of those, OneDrive and those collaborative platforms that we now use regularly, really maximize those. So I don't know if that got too in the weeds there, but
I thought it was great.
Thanks.
Yeah. I don't have much more to add to that. So
Okay.
I think it's a blessing to get to have that technology for sure. I think if we didn't have that throughout this time, it would have been maybe a little bit of a struggle to keep teamwork up. And so I think that that's been a big positive for sure in this time that we find ourselves in, is the technology we have available to each of us.
I definitely agree. Okay, well, do you guys have any other final thoughts?
No, just thanks for listening. We know this is a really broad and complicated and complex topic, so really do reach out to us if we didn't touch on something, or if there's something else that you'd like to see. We're happy to talk through that and share that with OLA as well. We can always discuss this further.
Okay, well, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Don't forget to fill out your session evaluation, and we hope to see you for some other sessions.